Old-style Metis fiddling is a unique musical style which reflects the cultural roots of the Metis Nation itself, a people born from French-Canadian, Scottish, and Orcadian fur traders, and Cree and Ojibwa women. The melodies of Metis fiddle tunes bear characteristics of Old Scottish and French-Canadian fiddling styles, while the tunes' erratic rhythms and phrasing reflect the influence of the First Nation singing traditions. Metis fiddling evolved through the 18th and 19th centuries, spreading throughout Rupert's land, the vast territory controlled by the Hudson Bay Company, by way of the fur trails. By the mid-19th century, Metis fiddling could be heard in settlements all across Western Canada, from the Metis camps of Manitoba to the fur trading post of Rocky Mountains. The proliferation of Metis fiddling came to an abrupt halt in the 1880s in the wake of the suppression of the Northwest Rebellion and the execution of Metis revolutionary Louis Riel. Many Metis, ashamed of their heritage, tried to pass themselves off as white or Indian when they could, and many Metis cultural expressions, including old-style fiddling, gradually faded into obscurity. Nearly a century after Riel's death, a Canadian fiddler named Anne Liederman was introduced to old-style Metis fiddling, a relic of a bygone era which, by that time, was largely confined to small rural communities in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, teetering precariously on the verge of obsolescence. Hoping to study and preserve this dying Western Canadian art form, she made and collected over 100 scratchy recordings of nameless old-style Metis fiddle tunes, performed by a handful of Metis elders. Liederman's collection is, to quote the Canadian Metis magazine New Breed, the most important collection of old-time Metis fiddle music ever published. In the 1980s, old-style Metis fiddling, due in part to Liederman's efforts, made a comeback in what has been called the Metis cultural renaissance. Metis fiddlers like John Arcand and Calvin Volrath breathed new life into the art form by composing and recording hundreds of original Metis-style fiddle tunes. Today, Metis fiddling is a celebrated Canadian tradition that enjoys a growing following. The tunes in this CD are modern reproductions of some of the nameless traditional old-style Metis fiddle tunes preserved in Liederman's recording collection. Many of the tunes' names are the actual names of the long-forgotten frontier tunes alluded to in the late 19th century Canadian prairie newspapers. Each fiddle tune is accompanied by a traditional buffalo skin drum in an attempt to evoke the spirit of the old fur trails of Rupert's land, on which old-style Metis fiddle tunes were first played so long ago.